Hello and welcome to this brand new tutorial series here in Blender. We are working with Blender 3.2.1, which is currently the latest version. And we'll start by covering the basics. If you've done photo editing before on the computer, you might think intuitively that left click is the way to move around in space, but that is not the case in Blender. Left click is the command to select things. You can also select the objects in what we call the outliner. So we can select the camera, the cube, or the light. The outliner is the top right window right here. And that is what we can do with the left click. And in order to change your perspective in 3D space and in order to orbit around the pivot points, you have to click on the scroll wheel, so that's what we call the middle mouse. And then you can move in this kind of a manner. As you can see, while we're doing that, the rotation pivot point stays in the middle. So we're only orbiting around the center of our scene. But if we actually want to move the pivot point, we have to hold down the shift button and then use the middle mouse. So if I wanted to move my pivot point more to the right, I would just press shift, hold the middle mouse and move it over here. And now you can see that we're rotating around this point and you can see it on the axis right there. Scrolling in and out is basically your way to zoom in and out of your object. So we have these basic three commands: orbiting, parallax, and zooming in and out. And it's important to get comfortable with these commands when you're navigating your viewport. It really makes everything a lot easier. Oh yeah, fun fact regarding navigation, we can go over here and then we can pick fly navigation. And now we're basically in a video game and we can change the direction of flight with our mouse. And you can use the WASD keys to change your velocity in space. This is kinda neat, but you can just left click anywhere you want to get out of this view again. And there's also the walk navigation, which basically feels like you're playing Minecraft in Blender. I mean, it's unexpected, but it's kind of fun, isn't it? However, there will be moments that we have to look at our scene exactly from the top, the bottom, the left, or the right with mathematical precision. Because that is very important to modeling when we're gonna work on that later on. So if you press this key on the keyboard, a pie menu opens which shows all these things I just talked about. Left, bottom, top, right, etc. But the most important part is the view selected function. For example, if you're working on a model with a lot of different objects and you want to get into detail on one of those, then you can just select the object with left click as we discussed before. With the view select option, you can really zoom into it. You can really look at all the details and make it fill your screen. And also when you do that, the 3D pivot point is set to the exact center of your selection. And right next to each of the options in the pie menu, there's always a number. And these numbers correspond with the specific function you want to achieve. So instead of clicking on the pie menu, you can also just press on one of the numbers on your keyboard to do it quicker. So if you want to go to the top view, for example, you just press the number that corresponds with the top view, and there you go. Pretty self-explanatory, really. And in Blender, you can basically do everything with hotkeys, and I highly advise you to learn those because it'll make your life a lot easier. When I started out with Blender, I was very much, well, not using hotkeys, and I was continuously using the move tool, etc. But when I actually started learning all the hotkeys, my work speed improved, my workflow improved, and I just felt a lot more confident in the program because I knew like 40 shortcuts. It really helps. Right now we're looking at our scene in the perspective projection, which we can change by clicking the little icon right here, and now we're in the orthographic projection. The difference between the perspective projection and the orthographic projection is, in the perspective projection, things scale along with your camera, so the further you go away, the further away the object looks. In the orthographic projection, that doesn't happen. There's basically no vanishing point. Most people stay in the perspective projection, but the orthographic projection is used, for example, in mathematics and other applications like that. So if you are a math teacher that, for example, wants to teach its students how vectors work and those kind of things, then the orthographic projection is for you. Also, you may have noticed that if we go to one of those pie menus and we navigate to one of those views, it changes from perspective to orthographic projection. So for example, if I would click the back view here, plop, then you see that I'm looking at it from the back in the orthographic projection. This will especially be interesting to us when we're working on modeling and it needs to be mathematically accurate, and to eliminate the movement on one of the axes. To go into camera view, we can click on the pie menu and we can click on the view camera option, or we can just press 1 on the keyboard and go there immediately. And now we are in the camera view and we're looking at our scene from the perspective of the camera. You can also select this with the symbol in the top right. Now we can also select the camera while we're in camera view and we can move it and rotate it and do all sorts of things like that. And how we move and rotate and scale things and how we delete things, that is what we'll be discussing in the next lecture.